Good morning. Sunday morning. Wait a minute. It's Sunday afternoon. Do you guys remember that when Nancy Pelosi appeared on the news looking like she was out of her mind? Like she hadn't had her meds yet and she was like, "Good morning. Sunday morning." I remember that one. I think it's fun day. And it's funny. It's funny fun day. It's conspiracy Sunday, guys. And I've got a few interesting conspiracies to talk about today. And then tomorrow, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be doing the Canadian election results. I don't know if I'll stay for the whole thing. We'll do some of it, see what happens. I'm going to talk about a couple of things, including Jordan Peterson and different things about Canada. There's some news going on there. So we'll see what goes on. I know we got John aside here, incognito. Hopefully some of you will stream in while we are chit-chatting. I've had to alter the times a little bit. I was going to do this later. I wasn't sure how long I would have to spend talking about this. We're going to kind of go over Adolf Hitler and disappearing. Maybe he's still alive again towards the end. We've got some Princess Diana stuff to talk about. And that's going to be really interesting because Princess Diana's death has never set right with anyone. So we're gonna discuss a few things that tie into stuff perhaps that's still going on to this very day. We're also going to talk about Virginia Giuffre. She was the witness in the Epstein thing. Prince Andrew involved, royal family stuff again. She apparently allegedly committed suicide. Now we know that's crazy. We know that's absolutely crazy. That did not happen. And of course, I'm going to start out talking about iPhone being satanic. I don't know what you think about that. It's a little bit crazy. But before I do, remember, guys, go to the website to subscribe if you're not already subscribed on either Rumble, YouTube, or Twitter or X. Those are where we live stream. So genxonx.com. Check it out there. You can subscribe on all those platforms. You can also donate if you want to. The links to Venmo, PayPal, Cash App are all right there. I'll pop them up right here as I'm talking. Why does it always do that? So we've got the PayPal. And then, of course, Venmo. And Cash App. And, of course, I just did a show for my subs on X. If you do $5 a month as a sub on X about Jordan Peterson attacking Christianity. I'm going to mention Jordan Peterson a few times, probably because he's Canadian, on Monday's show. But you would have gotten that extra little tidbit, and you would have got the documentary and e-zine archive and all that stuff if you're a subscriber on the X. That's at Gen X News on X. Again, that link is also on the website, genxonx.com. That is genxonx.com. You can check it out there. So I don't know what you guys are doing. I'm exhausted. 2 nights of really crappy sleep. And I'm hoping to make it through this show. Probably run about an hour. See how long I can last. Oh my God. It's just one of those weekends where we just had too much things to do and not enough time in a couple of days and things that we had to get done. So it's just how it plays out. You guys, it's just how it plays out. So bear with me on the show because things are getting weird. And I don't know about you, but I mean, I have an iPhone. One of the biggest reasons I do have an iPhone is my son does not live in the same country as me. He's an adult over in Canada, but I can send him text messages and not get charged for them through iPhone. So he has an iPhone, I have an iPhone, and I was trained in graphic design, and one of the standards of graphic designers is Mac. So I always had a Mac. If you're a gamer or something like that, or coder, you might like, a PC, a regular Microsoft or whatever. But so I used to have a Samsung, but I don't know if Samsung's any better. But iPhone's the original smartphone, right? And we all know the logo and all of that stuff. the apple with the bite taken out of it, da 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 da. Well, there's a conspiracy theory about the iPhone being the Antichrist. Here's the thing about conspiracy theories, and I had someone get all titchy with me in the comments. Maybe I'll show you the comments saying, "This is pathetic, get a job," because I kind of mentioned the conspiracy theory. Look, just because I say conspiracy theory and I'm going to talk about it on my show doesn't necessarily mean I think it's true or real or whatever. Dude's like, "Go get a job." I'm like, "Hey, douche fuck, you're the one who's commenting here. Why don't you keep scrolling and get a job?" Anyways, we're going to look at this. The iPhone. Is this it here? Yeah, it is. Now we got it. So this idea that the iPhone...
Careful with your iPhone, as there is a theory that suggests it is a...
I didn't mean to press that so soon. There's this thing about the iPhone. And it's just some strange history about it. We were talking about the obelisk and the black cube, Stanley Kubrick's 2001. And there's a lot of people who think that that obelisk shape that, influences mankind. A lot of people think that is like a reference for like the movie screen or an iPhone now, like it was predicting the iPhone. There's that theory out here. But this one kind of goes a little bit farther into that it is the Antichrist. So let's check out and see what these people have to say about it.
A subtle symbol of the Antichrist. Indeed, some argue that the I in the name iPhone refers to the eye, a symbol often associated with surveillance and control. And this is where the theory becomes truly intriguing. The iPhone has the ability to hear and observe nearly everything you say and do constantly. It is constantly listening. And what about Siri? It turns out that if you spell Siri backwards, you get Iris. The iris is not only a part of the eye, but also the name of the Greek goddess of messengers, a bridge between humanity and the gods. If you flip over your iPhone and look at the back, you will see the famous Apple logo, an apple with a bite taken out of it. This reminds many of the forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden, the instrument Satan used to tempt humans and lead them to commit the original sin. Thus, the iPhone, this ever-present device displaying the symbol of original sin, could indeed...
It cut off a little bit there. They only had a minute, but it's this idea of this ever-watching sort of presence that many of us, I should say, think is this tool and benevolent element to help us navigate, and we can access all this information all at once. But the actual Antichrist is right. It is supposed to be an individual, and that individual may represent a system. I don't know if an actual device tool makes sense unless it becomes and transforms into some kind of AI figure. Right? I don't know about you. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but for me, the thing about the Antichrist and all the stuff that we talk about with it is it's written in text, and anybody can transfer that and reinterpret that and apply it onto anything. And the other thing about biblical prophecy is once you have that written, the powers that be, they kind of construct what you believe, and they can actually create scenarios in which these things happen so as to motivate you to do something that they would like you to do. So they know you believe in an Antichrist. They know you believe in some kind of prophecy, and they use that in their advantage so that they can promote whatever, create an element of terror, or create some kind of chaos that will push you further to a sort of, I don't know, a solution or something that they want you to do. And they could use your Antichrist beliefs or anything that you have against you. So, yeah, it's a strange... I've always thought about that. Like, well, how would we know? Because everybody's always trying to point out the Antichrist. And the whole thing about it is no one is supposed to suspect it. They're literally supposed to be adored and loved by everyone. Right? Like, that's the gimmick. That's how it's supposed to be. So how would we, how is that supposed to take place? Because everybody today seems to be thinking that the end is nigh, and we're always pointing at all of these different figures. And I'm wondering, like, we're not supposed to know. We're all supposed to fall in love with them. All of us, left, right, center, up, down. Everybody is supposed to fall under this person's spell and think they are the answer to everything. And yeah, I just don't. I don't know if we're at that time. We're all so critical of everybody. I don't know. Anybody that comes to the forefront, the only way they'd be able to do it if they were able to mass hypnotize everybody. Maybe that's where it goes. But the iPhone is definitely, I mean, it's a tool. And like any other tool, this is mine. I've got my little fake 80s retro radio stuff on here. But it is a tool. And like any tool, we can use it for good and for bad. It's why I don't think the actual phone is the Antichrist. If there's something there, it's going to be an energy. It's going to be like a power or a person or some kind of organization, behind a person, behind the tool. This is just a navigational device, right? And yeah, it's going to be loaded with the symbols, the bite out of it. That's the most interesting reference of everything. Now, I don't know, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they meant it take a bite of knowledge. But of course, we know that goes right back to Genesis. That goes right back to the Bible, where Eve, of course, eats the forbidden fruit, asks Adam to partake too. They partake together. But we don't know if it was an apple. It's always presumed it's an apple in popular myth. So there's that reference, but we don't really know what the forbidden fruit. Yeah, someone incognito saying it sounds like AI. The AI is the situation behind it. I would agree. The AI, we're more likely to get taken over by AI than we are by this is just the tool. And so, I don't know, maybe our interaction with this tool and our interaction with the stuff in the cloud creates the sort of Antichrist figure. I don't know what you guys think about that. But that in of itself, the actual phone, it could be, I'm trying to take this off so we can look at the apple. What did I just do here? Yeah, see? We got our little apple. If you can even see it. It's reflective in the bite out of it. And it's so synonymous with these products. And these, Apple's been very revolutionary with technology. And I think, yeah, if anything's going to happen and there's going to be some kind of strange God, some sort of antichrist figure that's the opposite of the Christ consciousness, it's going to be in the form of technology. But the phone itself, I think that just to point to just the phone and just understand it as like a physical thing, I think would be a mistake. I think it would have to dig a little bit deeper to actually understand, how the phone's connecting to certain things and how it's taking the information. The Antichrist could be some being. If it's AI, it's literally absolving information from all of us. And so if it's hell because it's got it's absorbed all of us. It's absorbed. We are hell, guys. We are absolute hell. So it's literally absorbing us and creating this being. Have you guys ever seen the movie called The Keep? It's a good movie. It's a good book. The movie's kind of botched because they edit the heck of it and some of it doesn't make sense, but it's a really interesting movie. And this sort of evil demonic being that's in this keep that they open up, and it takes place kind of Nazi times, World War II, and Nazis go into this village somewhere in like Romania or something, like some Slavic country, and they go into this old keep. It's called The Keep, and obviously this keep is meant to push down this being. And of course the Nazi soldiers get greedy and try to go they try to get, there's these silver crosses and they're trying to get the silver from it. when the priest is gone, they're trying to dig it, and they open up this void. Anyways, they let this thing out, and it comes in this hideous being, and it's absorbing everything and attacking everybody. And he comes up to this one Nazi guy. He's like a lead Nazi guy. I think he's played by, it's got, what's his name in it, that Irish actor? Gabriel Burns. I'm not sure if he says it to him or someone else, but they're like kind of like, what are you? And he says, I am you. So basically, it's like this hideous being that gets formed, and it gets formed off of us, the evil that we have and collect as an individual and as a society gets put in this keep. I don't know. Maybe that's what AI is. Maybe that's what the Antichrist is. Maybe that's what that all turns into. But yes, Jonocide says he's seen it. I'm pretty sure Incognito has seen it. Look, the movie's choppy. They did some bad editing. They hacked it apart and got freaked out like they do. And they didn't do the book justice, but I would still recommend to watch the book. It's like an 80s, or watch the movie. It's an 80s movie. It's called The Keep. It's got Gabriel Burns. That's based on a real castle in Eastern Europe. Well, I may need to go. I'm Eastern European, so I may need to go and check that out. The Keep. It's spooky stuff. Gotta watch it. It's a good movie. It's got Gabriel Burns, and it's got that English actor, Ian Magneto Man. I can't. I'm struggling for names. Ian McKellen. Thank you. A few other actors that are really good in it, and so yeah, Incognito said we gotta go check out Eastern Europe one day when things settle down. But yeah, that could be it. That could be, I always do that kind of, that movie is like a reference for me, like a collective of how it goes. And look, there's always stories of these kind of evil beings and this collective stuff, whether it's a demon or AI, it happens all throughout our history. So we're not the first people to be like, oh my God, AI is this, but we're the first people, I think, to have this kind of technology. Scott Glenn is in it. That's right, Scott Glenn. So that is the phone. We could be holding the Antichrist in the palm of our hands and not even know it. Okay, guys. I'm not telling you to throw your phones out and freak out. I'm just saying. I say this about everything. Look, we're always in a box. Everyone says, I'm thinking outside the box. We're all in a box at some level. We'll never be out of a box. We've got to have some kind of structure, some organization, some rules. The point is just to be aware of the box, I think. For me, it's to be aware of the box and go, okay. And like, if the box gets too small, or, a tyrant's trying to mess up my box, you're going to get mad, because we all have to have some kind of structure. And it's just to be aware that there's these ideas out there. They could be false, they could be true. But one thing that we need to move into now, we need to delve into the stuff we're going to get into on Princess Diana. And I'm going to start out with the latest news. Interestingly enough, I was always calling her Virginia Giuffre, but I think it's pronounced Virginia Giuffre. Interestingly enough, Virginia Giuffre. She was the witness that they had that was in the Epstein case. That there is the infamous picture of her with Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew. And we know these guys, gosh knows how all these elites are connected and what they're doing, but she was a major witness in the case. And several weeks ago, it had been reported that she had been hit by a bus and didn't have long to live. She survives this bus, being hit by a bus, apparently. This is such a strange story. And then just the other day, it was reported that she had committed suicide. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the minute everybody who saw that had to think this is crap. This is garbage. And I'm just going to pull up this here to remind you of what she had said. That is a picture of her right there. Virginia Giuffre. She's saying, and I don't have the time stamp on this, but I think this was a while back. She said, I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me, in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. Okay? So this is so, I mean, it's just so bizarre and so strange. And let's go see what people are saying about it. No one believes this. I know you guys do not believe this. There's the famous picture of her with Prince Andrew, and he is a scumbag. He's an absolute scumbag, and I can't believe his ex-wife or any of them want anything to do with these people. These people are absolute insane, scummy people. No one's believing she was suicidal. Here we go.
I was so young. Ghislaine woke me up in the morning and said, you're going to meet a prince today. I didn't know at that point that I was going to be trafficked to that prince. And then that night, Prince Andrew came to her house in London, and we went out to Club Tramp. Prince Andrew got me alcohol. It was in the VIP section. I'm pretty sure it was vodka. Prince Andrew was like, let's dance together. And I was like, okay. And we leave Club Tramp, and I hop in the car with Ghislaine and Jeffrey, and Ghislaine said he's coming back to the house, and I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that even royalty were involved.
You have it. So that's her official test, like when she was being interviewed. This is out there. I don't know how they would think, or maybe they don't care. Like maybe it's not important to them. But I don't know how they could possibly think that they could just do this, knock her off, and nobody would think anything. Maybe they planned the bus accident and thought people would believe it, that she got suicidal after the bus accident, and that would throw us off. But people aren't thrown off so easily anymore. I mean, they're just not. People are not buying this crazy stuff, and I'm not so sure that they even care. They're just reckless. They are just absolutely mad. Everybody is, yeah. And of course, no one released the Epstein files. They gave us junk that had already been released. Nobody released any video footage. They have tons of stuff from that house, and they have so much. And there's Prince Andrew. He is such a gross lizard pig. Look at him. Nobody believes this suicide. There's just absolutely no way that she killed herself. But it's interesting because decades ago, in 1997, of course, Princess Diana, Princess of Wales, as she was known when she was married to Prince Charles, died in a horrific car accident. And there's this sort of idea that if you mess with the royals, you don't last too long. Like they'll only tolerate so much. And obviously Princess Diana, in a lot of people's mind, was more beloved than, say, Sarah Ferguson, who was the wife of Prince Andrew. Who knows what Sarah Ferguson hides and covers for Prince Andrew, because they seem to be really dysfunctional, and she seems to cover a lot of stuff, maybe for her life. She always had lots of debt problems. She was never quite as popular as Diana. People didn't really like her quite as much. And she seems to always be still in with him and talking with him and super, I don't know, just propping that guy up. And of course, the thing about Diana's death that was so suspicious, she was dating Dodi Fayed at the time. And a lot of people, even Dodi Fayed's father, was totally suspicious of a lot of it. And Diana had been doing a lot of good work. She had been doing a lot of good work with landmines and making people aware of landmines and the damage that they could do, and trying to get this sort of, awareness and removal of landmines. And she was very successful in a lot of charity work, and people really loved Diana. They responded very well to a lot of her charity work. She wasn't called the People's Princess for nothing. But it's really interesting, and I just came across this on X the other day, and I had no idea that this even existed, that Diana's death, and there's a lot of conspiracies, like I'll read you a few of them, like that the press was in on it, that the press did it, that it was a ritualistic killing, the royal family is in on it. Look, the royal family being in on it would not surprise me. And we'll do sort of a connection here. But there's a lot of talk about, because, her name was Diana, and look, if you weren't alive then, it was so crazy. Everything around it felt like a ritual killing now that I look back. And it was 97, so I was about 20. And I remember it was my ex-husband's parents' house. We drove up and heard his stepfather came out and said, "Hey, Princess Diana's dead." And I was totally in disbelief, because I always studied the royal family. I had like a chronicle book about the royal family. I didn't believe him when he said it. I thought he was lying. Like, I thought he was just making it up, but of course he wasn't. And they televised that on TV, and the narrative, and how the paparazzi chased her into this tunnel in Paris, and there was an accident, and people were suspicious because it was almost like they made them wait there in that tunnel for a certain amount of time, making sure that she would die. And of course, she was alive when she got to the hospital, and she died in the hospital. And there was a lot of suspicions about it being religious, about it being some kind of satanic thing. But there's something that I think is probably, if there is a conspiracy around it, okay, that there was something very political and something a lot more, you could say, biblical, if you know who it's connected to. But what a lot of people don't realize about, not only was she dating Dodi Fayed, who was, I think was an Arab, Muslim, maybe even wanted to marry him. She was also planning one of her next projects. And she apparently, according to is it MI5? British intelligence? She was planning to bring awareness to Gaza and Palestine. And I got a video here to check it out. I think it's an MI5 agent who's talking about it, that her death could have been tied to a certain intelligence agency over in a certain country that is bombing the shit out of Gaza right now. Because she was trying to bring attention to the plight of the people of Gaza and Palestinians. So we're going to go and check this out, because it's dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Let's check this one out. A lot of people will say that she was pregnant, that this and this, and it's not that. It had something else. And whether or not this is true, I don't know. But this was Annie Meshon. She was a former British intelligence officer. She said Diana was a threat to the Israeli lobby. Okay, just the same way that JFK was a threat, just the same way that RFK was probably a threat, or anybody else that. And so this is allegedly, I cannot say if this is 100% true. Annie was in, I think, from 90 to 97 in British intelligence. Check this out.
Rest of it, and I have to say, my personal opinion, I think yes, they did intend to at least seriously injure or kill her. And it's not just about the fact that, was she pregnant, wasn't she? We'll never know, because they embalmed her against all French law so quickly. And all the other speculative things you see in the press. It's also the fact that it was reported that she was being a great success in the landmine campaign that she was running. Yes. But also, she was about to go into campaigning on the behalf of the Palestinians. Now, you can imagine someone of Princess Diana's profile doing that. They would not have tolerated it. They could not have dealt with that. So I think that's why she was taken out.
Now, that's some pretty crazy evidence or declarations. She hasn't shown us any evidence. So I'm going to repeat that. There's no physical evidence, but there was a lot of suspicions around her death. And a lot of people thinking it was done on purpose. People were very suspicious because of, it almost felt like she was held in that tunnel to make sure. And I've always talked about Bibi Netanyahu and his religious fanaticism about this. And let's see what Bibi, I'm just going to look up. So let's do an overview of Bibi, and let's see what he was doing in 1997 and what kind of office he was holding. So he's an Israeli politician who served as the Prime Minister of Israel since 2022. He had previously held the office of Prime Minister from 96 to 99. So he was a Prime Minister during the time that she died, and from 2009 to 2021. He's the longest serving Prime Minister in Israel's history, having served a total of 17 years. That's really weird. And his parents are secular. He's a secular. Oh my God. So that's what I thought. He was Prime Minister during that time when Diana passed away in that tunnel in Paris. And they say her driver was drunk, her chauffeur or whatever. Look, these guys can make up stuff. They controlled the narrative. And these news, I know everybody was probably really depressed and really upset. I was upset when she died. People were upset. People are, it's so over-exaggerated. People are crying. But people were generally shocked that someone from the royal family could be die like that. So people say, well, they're just so shocked. They naturally want to explain it away. But there were suspicions. There was total suspicions about it and how long they held her there. And look, the thing about media, it doesn't matter if it's the BBC, the CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, CBC in Canada, they're all propaganda. And at the time, we wouldn't have realized, we just thought they were telling us the news and what's happened. And the 24/7 propaganda, it's like they play it over and over and over again because they want their narrative in your head. They want it in your mind. They want it in your head. And so I find it so bizarre that she was planning to campaign on behalf of Palestinians because she would have had an effect because she was quite beloved around the world. I mean, there's nobody who, and there probably were some people who didn't like her, but not very many. Even to this day, people love Princess Diana, even right to this day. We're going to watch another video on it. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments, but there is this connection about her death with Mossad, and I had heard satanic this, satanic that, but had never heard, and maybe this is something that people have known for a while, but it's interesting because this stuff is playing out in our lives all the time. All the time. Right now, they may be trying to go to war and bring us into a war with Iran. Also, they can expand and create this holy land. What it tells me is we've got this long arching narrative plan. And we know who owns the land over there. We know who owns the land over there. Rothschild. And the Rothschild runs the British family. So she was divorced and she was doing things they didn't approve of. And she was pro-Palestine and people loved her. That means she's a super threat to the Rothschild. The Rothschild controls the royal family. They run all the banks. They don't care who's the king or the queen or whatever. They run everything. That's all they have to know. They would have been like, oh, that's a threat. That would have been too much. I mean, absolutely too much of a threat. And so you consider people like Virginia Giuffre, interesting name, Giuffre, they can have a lot of people done away with. They can just make it happen. So nobody faces consequences, but people know, people are seeing this stuff. People are seeing the rot in the system and how a lot of this stuff is connected to the same people all over. Oh, okay. Let's check. That's the Virginia Giuffre video. That is not the Diana video. Let's see if we can find something. What's this say?
You believe there was a conspiracy to kill Dodi?
They been murdered. Dodi and Diana being murdered, definitely. I am the father who knows everything.
The secrets of the royal family aren't locked in a vault. They're revealed through Diana's recently discovered diary. Within its pages lie shocking confessions, hidden truths.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
And the haunting realities of life inside the monarchy.
Shocking allegations about Princess Diana's death. Authorities now reviewing the new and sensational claim that she was actually murdered by the British government.
What untold secrets did Diana unveil, which could destabilize the monarchy? But why were these confessions buried in the first place?
What has impressed you most about her?
I think just the qualities that are essential for somebody in a leadership role. Her 20th anniversary year feels like a good time to remember, all the good things about her. And
join us as we unravel the mystery of Diana's diary and the shocking truths it has uncovered. The People's Princess. Princess Diana's secret diary has revealed damaging truths about the royal family, leaving them speechless, shattering their facade.
Ever, Britain's Prince William is talking about the impact of losing his mother. He's hoping to help others by sharing his very personal thoughts.
My mother would have known that she'd been deceived. She was failed not just by a rogue reporter, but by leaders at the BBC who looked the other way rather than asking the tough questions.
And exposing struggles and betrayals that defined her life within the palace wall. Princess Diana. The mere mention of her name brings to mind beauty and royalty, a wedding fit for princes and princesses, elegance, glamour, a smile, and charm that could lighten up even the sternest faces. With all these, Princess Diana's life beyond the public was far from Cinderella. Far from it, beyond the veil, was pain and sorrow. Of course, she was the people's princess. But that public admiration was not enough to make Diana happy. Her introduction to the royal family was a tidal wave of popularity and a sea of problems. A 20-year-old girl gets swept off her feet by her dream prince, only to discover that she is in a world where appearances matter more than emotions. Diana soon learned that while smiling and making the right curtsies was important in royal life,
You believe there was a conspiracy
Yeah.
to kill Dodi?
Can you guys imagine what it must have been like to be part of that? And I mean, Princess Diana, she actually goes up to the real British. She goes up to the Stuarts. Her bloodline goes to real English bloodline. The Windsors are the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. They're German, Hanoverian sort of royalty line. And like I told you on that one show, the British monarchy was infiltrated right after King Charles I. He was beheaded, and they had the restoration later. They put his son back on the crown, but his son, the King Charles II, was the last one who really ever had any kind of say. After that, Parliament and the bank structuring changed in England, and a lot of people they don't even know that history. They don't know the Rothschilds got in there with the banks at all. They haven't got a clue. So they've controlled things, and we know Israel's Rothschilds' plan. The Zionism is their plan, and they have this globalist plan. It's like get in there, take over that whole Middle East area. That is their goal. Bibi Netanyahu has a goal, of course, of rebuilding the temple and restructuring things. I don't know how it's going to go with him. I don't know if Trump will agree to that. Naturally, they use America to fulfill a lot of their war goals. They always have been. Most of those wars that we have started in the Middle East have been started on the behalf of Israel. Unfortunately for us, we got this other document here. Now, this is not an official news source, but we're going to check it out. This says the assassination of Princess Diana. Was it M16? Was it CIA? Was it Mossad? Or all three? They think intelligence agencies did it on purpose. And it says, in the wake of passing Lady Diana, the former Princess Diana, a whole host of conspiracy theories were advanced as the real cause of her death. Once the fact became established, it was fairly easy to exercise. It was a fairly easy exercise to determine who actually perpetrated the crime, as well as who ordered the hit. The reality at the time was that Diana posed a greater threat to the British monarchy in a way that no other person associated with the crown did, because of her missions to ban landmines worldwide and to help emancipate the Palestinians from Israel's apartheid. Her work became quite radioactive. With this understanding, the following narrative is presented, wherein the many facts and prevailing circumstances point directly to a coordinated assassination. It indicates the conspiracy to murder Lady Di was carried out by M16, CIA, and the Mossad. The French DGSE, that's their external security, was also involved, since they have Paris hardwired in such a way that only they could have controlled the crime scene and aftermath as it was. They're talking. So they say Diana's tragic death not only resulted in massive outpouring of public sympathy, which I also covered. The majority of these anomalies were adequately covered by author David Icke. So take it or leave it, how you will. But let's go down here. According to police, Henry Paul's blood alcohol level was very high. Yet the Ritz security cameras revealed that Paul arrived at the hotel shortly after 10 p.m. and displayed no erratic behavior while parking his car, nor later in the hotel. Upon arrival at the hotel, Paul was in regular contact with Al Fayed bodyguards Trevor Rees-Jones and Kes Wingfield. Neither of them observed any evidence suggesting that Henri Paul was intoxicated. Oxygen purportedly was administered at the crash site to the injured Diana by Dr. Frederick Malaise, who later made contradictory statements concerning the event. Investigative judge Harvey Stephan attributed the crash to Henri Paul's drunkenness, yet failed to interview key witnesses such as the bodyguard or persons claiming to have observed the collision between the Mercedes and the white Fiat Uno. A spokesperson at the British Embassy in Paris claimed that the embassy staff was unaware that Princess Diana was in the city, a claim refuted by the fact that two very senior members of M16 were at the embassy on the same day at her arrival, so they knew she was there. They would know she was there. That's ridiculous that they wouldn't know. The numerous anomalies surrounding the crash and the eagerness by both the investigative authorities and the news media to solely blame the hapless Henri Paul for the incident strongly suggest the occurrence of a massive cover-up. The news media claimed that Paul had been battling alcoholism for the last year, yet his autopsy revealed that his liver was normal for a person of his age. According to Henri Paul's friend, he was not a heavy drinker and he led a quiet life. Moreover, he had successfully passed a medical exam for renewal of his pilot license only a few days prior to his death. An accomplished musician and lover of classical music, he had a passion for flying light aircraft. A possible explanation for the high alcohol content is that his blood sample may not have been refrigerated in a timely manner, thus allowing decomposition of the blood. There is no published record of the time or temperature of the body at the time of storage. It was claimed that the blood sample also contained carbon monoxide level of 20.7%, which would have been higher prior to death. Such abnormally high and near lethal percentage would have resulted in nausea, confusion, violent headache, and difficulty walking, yet at the Ritz, it shows him perfectly with none of these symptoms and in functional manner. According to Commodore Mules, head of the Paris Criminal Brigade, which had the responsibility for investigating the crash, carbon monoxide was inhaled when the driver's airbag inflated. So he's saying that's why he had that high level. So that's interesting. In addition, it is customary for French firefighters to wear carbon monoxide detectors, yet none of the firefighters at the crash scene reported detection of the deadly gas. Henri Paul's death was virtually instantaneous upon impact, primarily caused, according to the French autopsy report, by a ruptured aorta. This injury would have prevented carbon monoxide from being circulated throughout the body. Very significantly, Dodi's father was refused permission by French authorities to have an independent blood and DNA analysis conducted. In all probability, what really happened is the blood sample had been taken from a person who had consumed large quantity of alcohol prior to committing suicide by attaching a hose to exhaust pipe of a vehicle. Interesting. So, anyways, so they ignored eyewitness accounts. Sadly, Prince Charles also suffered an okay, I don't know what they're going on. So some people are saying that it was a satanic ritual. But I don't know. I mean, it could be, but there's something about this whole Mossad thing in that she was really going against the royal family. And I don't actually know if she understood exactly how evil, because she would always say they were evil, like lizard people, right? Like she would always make that claim. The MI6. Yeah. Anyway, she would always make that claim that they were evil, they were lizard-like. So here we go. Diana allegedly underwent 2 heart attacks between the time of the crash and her arrival at the hospital. Unlike ambulances typically used in most countries, the ambulance of French emergency services, SAMU, are actually sophisticated mobile surgical units. It would therefore be readily apparent to the ambulance crew attending to Diana's injuries that a heart specialist would be required after her arrival. Incredibly, despite radio communication, no heart specialist was present when the ambulance finally arrived at the hospital, nor had a heart-lung machine been prepared for Diana's surgery if required. Still, French authorities had found time to summon French politicians, police, and British ambassador Sir Michael Jay to the hospital prior to the arrival of the ambulance. Inexplicably, 1 hour and 46 minutes elapsed between the time of the crash and the arrival of the ambulance at the hospital. That is insane. The cause of Diana's death was attributed to a ruptured pulmonary vein, which resulted in massive internal bleedings. Physicians in numerous nations later heavily condemned the ambulance crew for taking such an inordinate amount of time to transport Diana to the hospital, which only entailed a 4-mile journey. 4 miles. Wow. Had she been transported sooner, they claimed her chances of survival would have been good. It almost feels like it was on purpose. Diana was pronounced dead at 4 a.m. on the same day the crash occurred. A very bizarre incident occurred later that morning, which clouds the issue of whether or not Diana was pregnant and also suggests unlawful course of action on part of the Windsors and French authorities. It is violation of French law to embalm a body prior to autopsy, or to embalm a body without the consent of next of kin. Yet a partial embalming of Diana's body above the waist was performed prior to an autopsy and without the consent of the Spencer family. The order to perform the embalming came from the office of Prince Charles at St. James Palace. This order was a blatant violation of French law since the prince was no longer Diana's husband. Strangely, a hospital spokesperson claimed that a sample of Diana's blood was never taken, which is very odd since they would have needed a sample in order to determine her blood type for administering blood transfusions purportedly given to her. The formaldehyde used in the unlawful partial embalming procedure prevented a full autopsy from being conducted later. That would have concealed evidence that Diana was pregnant or anything else that they needed to have. In order to find a scapegoat for the crash, the French investigative team, headed by Commander Jean-Claude Mules, claimed that the aggressive pursuit of the limo by the paparazzi caused the crash. When it became public knowledge that the paparazzi were several hundred yards behind the limo at the time of the crash, the investigators, aided by the British and the French news media, focused their attention on Henri Paul, claiming his drunkenness. Okay. So some people are saying there was a strobe of light. The consensus, let's see if we can get into this here. Let me check and see if there's any questions or comments. Nope. So the consensus, guys, it says, with the exception of Eric Patel's very questionable account of the crash, the consensus of 11 other eyewitness accounts suggests that after leaving the Place de la Concorde, Henri Paul accelerated, leaving the paparazzi behind, but was closely pursued by one or possibly two motorcyclists. Who were those motorcyclists? That's kind of weird. Approaching the Pont de Elma tunnel, one of the motorcycles aggressively cut in front of the limo, forcing Henri to swerve into the right lane in order to avoid a collision, only to be impeded by a white Fiat Uno barely moving. In taking evasive action, the limo veered to the left, clipping the Fiat and damaging its left taillight. Regaining control of the limo, Paul began turning to the right with the motorcycle in the left-hand lane and slightly ahead of the limo. At that precise moment, a pillion passenger on the motorcycle apparently triggered a strobe light, which temporarily blinded and disorientated Henri Paul, causing the fatal crash. It looks like they put some spies, like some Mossad spies, on a couple of motorcycles and just zoomed in and killed them on purpose. That's literally what it feels like. I don't know how you guys feel, but this is weird. Yeah, that's so bizarre. So people reported the strobe light. People actually said this is what they saw. The limo crashed into the 13th pillar. Interesting. 13 is a very important number. So they're doing the Satanist thing, sacrificing Diana. 13th pillar, prompting some investigative journalists to suggest that Henri Paul was a victim of mind control and had been programmed. I don't know. I would go with the fact that there was probably some psycho Mossad dudes or CIA dudes on those motorcycles trying to actually kill them. This person who wrote this article thinks that Diana's death was engineered by satanic 13 interrelated family bloodlines, collectively known, they're saying Illuminati, but I mean, who doesn't? But it's interesting. This was written in 2015, so a lot of people know this, but I just wanted to bring it up because of all the strange stuff going on with Palestine right now, and as we can see them moving their way, these people will kill anyone who gets in their way. Especially somebody like Princess Diana, who would have influenced people to speak out against. She totally would have, and they knew that was a threat. So if it's true that Diana was indeed planning to showcase the apartheid against Palestinians, and that would have drummed up sympathy around the world and questioning of Israel, and at the time Benjamin Netanyahu was president. There's no doubt. We know they've done crazy stuff. Look, we know they're all these agencies are running around moving all the pieces and whacking people. We know, we can see the crazy stuff coming out in the documents, and all these families involved. Very few people control the world, and unfortunately Diana was involved and married into a family that she didn't understand. She understood, she didn't like them. I don't know if she understand the depths of what goes on. And so bizarre that Prince Charles, who is now King Charles, would ask for an embalming for only half before they could do an autopsy. That is really bizarre. Very strange information. Very strange indeed. It's so disturbing. These people don't care. They don't care if this is real, if this is true. Which I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments what you think. You know, you guys tell me in the comments what you think. I've got another. Here we go. We'll share this. Ultra Mega Kevin on X. In 1997, Princess Diana was seen with her wealthy Muslim boyfriend in Los Angeles. Reports indicated that they were considering purchasing property in Malibu. At the time, I told everyone that British intelligence would never permit Princess Diana to marry a Muslim. It's really interesting that Islam sort of rules. Historically, the British Empire ruled much of the Muslim world. Months later, she and her boyfriend died in a car accident. It could have been an accident or a deliberate setup to eliminate her. Friends I had warned about her potential assassination called me on the day she died, asking how I had predicted it months earlier. Agencies like MI5, and CIA, Mossad, and the former KGB served their countries, sometimes ruthlessly. From the death of Mossad agent Epstein to Virginia Giuffre's demise, these events remain mysterious, though obvious to those who understand the world's ruthlessness. In 1997, Princess Diana was seen with him. Reports indicated, he's repeating. It's a double thing. So he's kind of tying it into these agencies too, but he does not mention why she was a threat. So not only was she dating a man who was Muslim, she was also pro-Palestine and wanted to bring attention to it. And we know she was successful because she was successful bringing attention to landmines. And she was a very people's person. If you watch videos of Diana, you will see people loved her. She was good with children. She didn't like the media. Remember who the media are. It's not just ragtag journalists. The media are propaganda. And the media are propaganda that works for the state. The BBC, they all work for these elite governments. And most of the time, Mossad, all these people, they control their media, with a few exceptions. And now today we live in a different world where we can talk about this. And we don't have to be inundated 24/7 with these narratives. We can have this discussion. I'm a very small, don't have a massive audience, but hopefully people cover this and talk about this because, how many more people probably lots more people will be executed. If somebody gets executed or done in the next few months or whatever concerning what's going on over in, with Palestine, etc. now, don't be surprised if someone's trying to bring attention or stop it. I think the narrative's getting out of their control. And the difference is with Diana, they were able to control the narrative because the internet was in baby steps. Like I don't even know if that I had the internet. I don't even think I had the internet at the time. I might have had some dial-up. I can't remember, but it was in its infancies. And now people are talking. But remember, even now, we go and look at podcasts. I'm pretty sure these agencies are in on podcasts trying to control the narratives. They'll give you a little bit of conspiracy about what you want, but not the full thing. Not the full heinous, picture of how evil these people really are and how corrupt and how everything's about stuff. There's nothing deep about these people. And I always wonder, with William, Prince William, like, is he going to be different? But I don't know if it matters because he doesn't, the British, they don't run the country. The bankers, the elite families, they run stuff. They run that and they run the world. So I don't know what to say about this, but it is, with all the corruption and all the ties, it's like everyone always says everything leads to Rome. Everything seems to be leading to Netanyahu or Israel. I don't mean Jewish people. I mean this government, these agencies, these sort of corrupt, wealthy, elite families. Everything's going back to them. And they're playing chessboard. And Diana was clearly a huge threat to whatever powers that be. Huge threat. Someone says she was differently unalived, but by who? No idea. Well, I think there's some really good toss-ups, and it is interesting to know. I'm just going to say it's interesting to know what she was going to bring awareness to, because that is that would have been a big no-no for certain agencies. All right, so oh my God, you guys, just before we get into the last one, I don't know what we're going to say about Hitler. I actually, we're coming over the hour mark and I might tie this up. I might go into Hitler later, but just to be like, weird stuff about Hitler. He's kind of one of the people, I think he has got the most documentaries made about him in the history of the world, which shows you they really want to control the narrative about World War II. It's everything comes from that narrative. It's so important. There's something so important about the narrative of World War II. If you dare question it, they literally go insane. They lose their absolute mind. If you even question, the numbers or if you question anything about the Holocaust, they lose their mind. They lose their mind. They absolutely do not care. And Ben Shapiro is a good example of somebody when the stuff came out on the JFK files, and it didn't say it, but it did kind of make it look like Israel was involved. He was like, who cares that it happened 60, 70 years ago? Who cares who killed him? Meanwhile, they'll always go on about something that happened 80 some years ago. Like, there's a lot of conspiracy going on. There's a lot of crazy stuff, and you're not allowed to talk about it. So we're not going to talk about it. We're not denying anything at all. I actually do have relatives that were put in concentration camps. So they did exist. They most certainly did. Now, I'll tell you one thing. If you go and search up Hitler, if you go and look him up, if you type Hitler conspiracies in TikTok, they will not let you. They will give you a link to go to their official narrative about the Holocaust. They won't. You're not allowed to. If you type in David Icke, nope, you are not allowed to talk about that. They will not let you. No, bad people. They won't. So you have to go to other sources. So here's this article, Hitler, Death Conspiracies, the Good, the Bad, and the Crazy. And of course, we got the one that he lived. That there's a lot of instances where a lot of people think, of course, we reviewed. I'm going to be so brief because we might have to find another documentary and do another stream about it, because people seem to like to hear this stuff. They want to actually hear it. People seem to be fascinated by him. And I think the Jews are actually, I think they're fascinated by him too, because they can't stop making movies about him. They can't stop making documentaries about him. They just can't stop. They are more fascinated than anybody else. with Adolf Hitler. I mean, they really are. But the idea that Hitler lived, and when we were talking about that documentary called Grey Wolf, there was a lot of problems with it, in that it didn't come on and present factual information and interviewed people who were historians or who'd worked for the FBI, or, they didn't really have that narrative. It felt more like a Hallmark movie for Nazi conspiracy theories, right? And it was just weak, because here's the thing about the whole thing with Hitler missing is, after Hitler was officially, German radio said he was dead, but they really didn't come to the conclusion and officially say it till like way in the 50s. And I'm talking the American government, Russia, all that stuff. They really didn't. And they thought he might have been alive. And there was like, Hitler was reported everywhere. Everybody was seeing Hitler everywhere they went. They like, he was working in a pizzeria in New York City, he was, everybody was seeing him all over the place. Who knows? There might have been people who still kind of dressed like him or wore a similar style. Maybe it was in fashion. I don't know. But he had a lot of sightings. And that's one of the problems when you get someone to say, yeah, I saw him. He had power. It was definitely Hitler in Argentina. Is that there was a lot of sightings of Hitler. The compelling part is that all we do know, there was a rat line, that Nazi rat line that went to Argentina, and there was lots of Nazis there. And of course, the party that was in Argentina, Juan Perón, he was Nazi, but he got kind of booted out. So they were hoping for a resurgence, and of course, it never happened. But that's the compelling part. The other compelling part, of course, is the skull. I won't get down to that here. On that day, the Okay, here it is. On the day, and that day was May 1st, 1945, the Grand Admiral of the German Navy, Karl Donitz, delivered a radio broadcast to the broken Reich. It announced that Adolf Hitler was dead and that he had died gallantly leading men in battle against Soviet forces, which I don't know if he was leading them. I have no idea. Now, there's a lot of people who think he died. They said he wouldn't have abandoned. He would have gone down with a ship because he loved Germany. So there's a lot of people who think that. Now, Donitz claimed that Hitler had named him as a successor in his last testament and that everything was basically fine. That's a weird thing to say when you're being blown to smithereens and the Soviets are coming in and America's coming in on another front. That's a weird thing to say. He said business would continue as normal, with the German government temporarily headquartered in Flensburg. 10 days later, Donitz was in Allied custodies, as were many other leading Nazis. So I don't know what he thought he was leading. In his effects was found a single telegram from Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, in Berlin, who was also now dead, announcing Hitler's death and omitting the bit about the Führer having fallen in combat. So Donitz made that part up. Within days, the war was over, the Third Reich was no more, but the fact that Hitler's body hadn't turned up rankled the Western Allies. Hitler wasn't supposed to mysteriously vanish into history. He was supposed to either stand trial or drop dead and leave a corpse to be verified. Thus was born the myth. Okay. One that still persists and was even reignited by the 2015 release of secret FBI documents containing reports that Hitler had escaped Germany in a U-boat and fled to Argentina. So the FBI had reports of this. Part of the problem in investigating the Führer's demise and easily debunking some of Hitler's death conspiracies is that the only people who were in the position to know what happened with any certainty were the Soviets, and they weren't eager to share information or be honest with the Allies. So this is the skull once claimed to be Adolf Hitler on display in Moscow in 2000. I think they debunked that was a female skull, though now they say they had dental records of a tooth. I don't know where that tooth is. And of course, Adolf Hitler's body was burned and scattered into the one they say is his body, burnt, cremated, and dumped in a river somewhere. So we have nothing. We have a fake skull, a tooth they say matches, but a skull that does not. It says between the end of the war, spring 94, and the fall of the USSR in 1991, Soviet authorities put out so many contradictory and self-refuting statements about Hitler's death that some of it must have been conscious disinformation. After initially claiming that Hitler was dead and that they had the remains to prove it, the Soviet then put out word that they didn't even have a body and then accused the British of smuggling Hitler and Braun out of Germany. After that, they claimed to have a fragment of Hitler's skull with a conveniently positioned bullet hole in it. Then, decades later, forensic examination revealed it was a woman, like I just told you. Despite that, Allied investigators tried to get to the bottom of things by interviewing anybody in Germany who might have known what happened to Hitler's bunker. So a lot of this narrative, what happened, was investigated way later, because the Soviets were giving contradictory, and this is why people don't trust it. But the thing is we don't have any solid information. We don't have a lot of evidence that actually says, hey, here's proof, here's physical proof that he was in Argentina anyways. Like, we don't have that either. So it gets a little confusing because you want something. If he was in Argentina and they had kids or something, you want some kind of line that shows something as well, and we don't have it, so it's conflicting. So we have SS General Walter Schellenberg. He was apprehended in Sweden, and he's saying that Himmler poisoned Hitler on his advice. The advantages to telling the story of betraying Hitler were obvious from a former Gestapo general looking to avoid punishment. So that's the thing. Now people are going to make up stories. Even if you ask them, they might say, I knew Hitler, and they didn't. They might say, I poisoned him because he was evil so they could get off, right? There's going to be a lot of tales. How do you know what's true and not true? In this time, you don't. You really don't. So you have another informant was a woman who claimed she had been at the center of a German intelligence ring from the inside a concentration camp at Ravensbrück. This woman whose name was Carmen Mori, swore she had firsthand knowledge that Hitler and Eva Braun and others were living in Bavaria. She also threatened to kill herself if the British didn't make concessions to her regarding her treatment. Okay. She was also facing trials for war crimes. So people will make stuff up. You just can't know. Another unreliable witness was Luftwaffe pilot Peter Bogmart, who claimed he had personally flown Hitler to Denmark. Eventually, he was in an insane asylum. The British reports on these informants, written by historian Hugh Trevor Roper, concluded that none of the first-hand accounts were credible, and neither was that of Donitz. Okay, there we go. President JFK. There's Werner von Braun. This is, and then there's like a lot of people who escaped. They're showing you Werner von Braun was a Nazi. He escaped Germany. He worked for NASA. There they are at Cape Canaveral. He with JFK and Lyndon B. Johnson. So the British were leaving esteemed historians to despair of ever knowing the truth. The Americans were, ironically, lending credence to Hitler death conspiracy theories, stating that he and other prominent Nazis had escaped. The Americans did so by actually helping prominent Nazis escape themselves. That was Operation Paperclip. We know that the subjects of Nazis escaping justice came up from time to time in the decades after the war. Here we go. Let's go. Sightings of Adolf Hitler after World War II. If the Hitler death conspiracies were true and he had escaped, it wouldn't be easy for him to hide. And it would be easy for a passerby to recognize him. So when informants started cropping up all over the world, such as an Argentine expat in Los Angeles who claimed he had personally seen Hitler and his entourage getting settled into their new homes at the foot of the Andes, the FBI stepped in to investigate. The FBI investigation pulled from multiple sources all over the world, and it was eventually joined by the CIA. The CIA effort, which ran into the 60s, included a sighting report from an SS veteran named Philip Citroen, who claimed to have been in regular contact with Hitler in Colombia, and that the former Führer moved to Argentina in January 1955. The CIA report on Citroen's statements even included a microfilm photograph that purported to show Citroen sitting with Hitler in South America. They couldn't prove anything without some hard evidence. They closed their cases, so they couldn't find anything official. The idea that the most wanted man in history may have faked his death still lived, even though. So we got the Grey Wolf book. If it's trash and it involves Hitler, it'll be on the History Channel during May sweeps. That's so funny. The History Channel began running pseudo-documentaries called Hunting Hitler. And the problem with all these is nobody ever... They do Hunting Hitler, but they dangle a carrot. Nobody ever actually finds Hitler or even finds any evidence, and it's the biggest issue. There's got to be something. No one can disappear without a trace. And because so many people lied about Hitler, it's hard to believe any testimony, right, guys? Like, you can't just believe anybody because everybody makes something up. Everybody seen Hitler, do this. I killed him. I did this. I saw him here. And it makes it harder to find the truth. They're saying that his adjutant SS officer, Otto Gunsch, reported being ordered to find several liters of gasoline suitable for burning remains a day or two before Hitler's suicide. That's the official narrative. Furthermore, Hitler seems to have settled on April 30th as his suicide date because it was the latest day when he could be sure there would still be time to burn him properly before the Red Army took his chancellery. His concerns seem to have been that no trace of his remains should ever be recovered to serve his enemies as trophies. Funny enough, such drama was predicted years before by the Office of Strategic Services in 1943. The OSS asked prominent psychologists to assess what was then known about Hitler, and they predicted he would commit suicide. They said, it is probably true that he has an inordinate fear of death, but being a hysteric, he could undoubtedly screw himself up into the Superman character and perform the deed. In all probability, however, it would not be that simple suicide. He has too much of the dramatic for that, and since immorality is one of his dominant motives, we can imagine that he would stage the most dramatic and effective death scene he could possibly think of. He knows how to bind the people to him, and if he cannot have the bond in life, he will certainly do his utmost to achieve it in death. Interesting. Well, that could also include faking his death, couldn't it? It absolutely could. So, like on TikTok, you cannot get anything about a death. You can absolutely not. They won't give you anything on Hitler. What makes me suspicious about it is they won't let you see things on Palestine. And we know when TikTok shut down, when they were trying to shut it down, it was because people were sharing stuff about Palestine. People were saying, showing how Israel, Netanyahu, was genociding Palestine, and they wanted to shut it down because it was spreading like wildfire. They keep trying to shut every narrative about that down. It's why I think it's interesting that they won't let you talk about Hitler. So what if you think he survived? So what? But they don't want you talking about it. They try to shut it down in so many interesting instances. It is just bizarre. And that's the whole thing. They want you to know this narrative. They want you to know their official narrative. And I can guarantee you that if it involves the British, and we know, look, Churchill worked for Rothschild. There's a good chance Rothschild funded Hitler. We know the Bush family did. Like, it's a good bet that these powers that be are funding both sides, but they want you to know their official narrative, the British official narrative. They want you to think that the numbers are bigger than what they are, that it's more than what it is, and you're not allowed to question it. So you're certainly not allowed to on TikTok. Let's see what you're allowed to do on X. Let's just do a test here. Let's type it in. I think you'll probably get something on X. History is written by victors. Hitler's body was burned by an aid worker. The CIA at one point. See, people will question it. JFK said there was no complete evidence, however, that the body was found. There isn't. That's the whole thing. And so everybody, is this a mind blow? Or they want you questioning? Do they want you to not know? JFK document shows CIA heard rumor that, yeah, they heard the rumor, they investigated, they didn't really find anything. That's their official story. We don't know. But the body, the skull that's there was a female's. They're declaring that the dental records match the body that they had, but they burnt the body and they scattered the ashes. A lot of this stuff is all secret. It kind of reminds me of how Osama bin Laden, they're like, yeah, we got him. And then they throw a bagged body in the sea and don't show anyone. How is it that we know that was Osama bin Laden? Like, it was so strange. Like Diana, no autopsy, no nothing. All the rules and regulation that you would have for anything just gets thrown out the window. And they're like, hey, we're not going to let people see or take a picture. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to do an autopsy. We're just going to show you this white bag and throw it in the ocean. Bye. There's this pattern that happens that once you see it, you're like, hey, this is kind of weird. Why wouldn't they want us to know or see? Like, why is things so strange around a lot of these deaths? What is going on here? So let's see. Let's check this video out. I have no idea what we're going to watch. I have no idea, so I apologize if it's not allowed on here. Here we go. March 1st.
April 29th, 1945. With his back to the wall, Hitler reportedly accepts defeat and narrowly escapes from Berlin, Germany to Argentina via submarine after poisoning his bride of only 24 hours, Eva Braun, with cyanide. Hitler reportedly blamed the loss of the war on his engineers' inability to create a nuclear bomb, as well as the anti-gravity war machine known as the Die Glock, or the Nazi Bell, which Hitler planned to use against the United States military.
So if Werner Braun, if they had that nuclear bomb, which they developed later, the war would have been over. So X, you're going to get stuff. You're going to get, like this guy's talking about Hitler and international bankers. You're going to get all sorts of stuff. But this one's saying Hitler was a Rothschild who was funded by Zionist bankers. Of course, the note says factually incorrect. He was in the Hitler economy. Hjalmar Schacht created a scheme for deficit financing through the issuance of promissory notes. Schacht also took advantage of the end of the gold standard to increase deficit spending to rearm Germany. That might be true, but people were funding Hitler that were not. And we're never going to know that because that's information they don't want us to know. So X, you're going to find all this stuff. So far, it's allowed. This one's saying he didn't. This is Operation Eagle Flight. Yeah, they're calling it Operation Eagle Flight. Hitler fleeing to Argentina. Secret classified, microfilmed, 1963. There we go. Here's a document. Specific Adolf Hitler. I always spell Adolf Hitler with an F. Is it PH? Maybe I'm spelling it wrong. Adolf Hitler is still alive. There it is. Citroën claimed to have contacted Hitler. Well, we already kind of showed that those people made up a lot of stories, so we don't know. This is a document. It's just stating we don't know if it was real or not. So someone's saying he wasn't. Look, Hitler he could be controlled by the Rothschild and not be Jewish. He could have taken money and then decided to go against them. It seems like he tried to arrest a Rothschild and get rid of him at the time, when in reality Hitler was not into the occult. Actually, he was. They did a lot of occultism, especially some of the members. It was what they don't understand is the occult was huge in Germany at the time. It was all over the place. So they most certainly were influenced, and you just need to take a look at the symbolism in their stuff. You just need to take a look at the symbolism, and you can tell that they were into the occult. They used a lot of occult symbolism. It's easy. Someone said a comment in the audience: Hitler faked his death, reinvented himself 2 years later. Grigos Sorios emerges and operates to destroy. Gergely Sorios. Sorry, I don't know if I said that. Are you think he was related to a Soros? I don't know, maybe. Interesting. Grigos Soros. Interesting. That's an interesting theory. You'll have to... That's very interesting. So like I said, a lot of people still think that he made it out. He died in the 60s. They had children. Some people are saying he poisoned Ava Braun and then took off. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I buy that one either. Oh yeah. Oh, there. Look at that. We're right here. This is me live. This is me live inside the screen. I show up under Hitler conspiracy research. That's funny. There we are again. U.S. Homeland Security News. Wow. Yeah, well, if Hitler set up a Fourth Reich in Argentina, it didn't work out so well, because once Perón there was out, the Nazis fled. Like they knew they were in big trouble, that they couldn't just Okay, here's an interesting one. Ingersoll Lockwood Eagle Flight update. Ingersoll Lockwood has this link up to Operation Eagle Flight for a few weeks. Operation Eagle Flight is a fictionalized account of the escape of Adolf Hitler from Berlin to Bar-Loch. This conspiracy indicates that Hitler never died. Instead, he escaped, but was never found. American Eagle Flight 53422 was the flight involved in the mid-air collision with the Black Hawk helicopter that coincidentally left the CIA headquarters prior to collision. It's also very strange that President Trump issued a statement on the mid-air collision and ended the statement with 3 hashtags. The Ingersoll Lockwood link to the Operation Eagle Flight documentary is on 3 plus signs. Another link to one of the plus signs is to the Majestic 12, which goes into information about technology Hitler had access to. The aircraft they had access to was anti-gravity spacecraft similar to alien technology. Interesting. Could this be the reason for UFO sightings recently? So it says Eagle Flight's Hitler's escape plan. This is a statement for President Trump in January. I have been fully briefed on the terrible accident which just took place. Thank you for the incredible work being done. That is weird. There's a 3 hashtag. I don't know what the connection. I don't know why they're connecting that. Information regarding American Eagle Flight 5342. That's what just crashed. That's interesting, because that American Eagle Flight was the name of the fictional account that Hitler escaped. And that was one of the flights that just crashed. Okay, I don't know if I believe that George Soros is Adolf Hitler. I don't know if I believe that one. That's hard to believe. It's just a number thing. I don't know about you guys. George. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that. I think that's pretty plausible considering when George Soros was born and when Adolf Hitler was born. George Soros was born in 1930, so he would have been 15 when the war ended. Hitler was in his 40s or 50s when the war ended. There's just George Soros would be like 140. He'd be 100. Like I know they got some good, and he doesn't. George Soros doesn't look anything like Adolf Hitler. I don't know why Adolf Hitler would get plastic surgery to look like George Soros. That would be Adolf Hitler was born in 1889. He died at 56 years old. You see, there's too much of an age gap for that to even be remotely realistic. I mean, it's not him. Because, like, look, he would be 130 some years old right now. He'd be 125, 35. He'd be 136 years old. If George Soros had to be Adolf Hitler. 136 years old. I know he looks like shit, but he's not 136 years old. That I just not buying that one. Sorry. Can't get down with that. That's just too out on the math. The math skills don't be working there. It just doesn't add up. Sorry. I appreciate your input, but I'm just not going with that one. So anyways, guys, you can see it's very convoluted. And it's going basically on all the sightings, the fact that the Soviets were not accurate, they were not forthcoming. The stuff that they're presenting as Hitler turns out that it can't possibly be. Like there was other people at that bunker. The bodies were discovered. Who was it? They had him, his wife, and his children. Definitely was him. 100%. They recovered their body. But Hitler apparently didn't want his body violated. He didn't want people to do, like, he probably saw what happened to Mussolini and he thought, oh shit, like, come on, right? That's the idea. But could he have escaped? Could he have faked it, put some fake body? We know he had tons of doubles. It's possible. And it's always going to be a question. And it's always going to be a question because of what the Soviets, all the disinformation they put out. And the fact that there is nobody, there's this skull piece and that is just not Hitler's. It's a fake. It's a phony. And I don't know where the tooth is. They say matched to dental records. Apparently, Hitler only had one ball. And it's actually true. Apparently, in 1923 medical records, it's there. He had some sort of, what's it called? Monarchism or something like that, where one of the testicles doesn't drop or recede. So apparently there was a song, a British military song called Hitler Has Only Got One Ball. And apparently it's cryptochidism. Right-sided cryptochidism. Apparently that stuff's true. So Hitler only had one ball. That's not a conspiracy theory. He had one ball, guys. You heard it here. It's easy stuff to look at. But yeah, George Soros being Hitler, that would just take too much lying to yourself about numbers. It just doesn't, the numbers don't add up. And the numbers have to add up to some point. If there was a few years difference, you'd be like, hey, let's do a facial comparison. And that would be easy to prove. You could take pictures of Hitler, pictures of George Soros, and kind of line them up, and you would be able to tell these are not the same people. Even if they'd had plastic surgery, you'd be able to tell in the bone structure. And by the way, a lot of Nazis probably did have plastic surgery to hide. A lot of people don't realize plastic surgery existed in the 50s and 60s. Marilyn Monroe had plastic surgery. So it was there. It was in its infancy. It wasn't the way it is today, but it was there. That you could get some alterations so that you looked different and people would not think you are a Nazi. But the game's out. The narrative is always being questioned. And you know what? These people have no one to blame but themselves. These agencies and these people who put out all this information, they lie so much that nobody believes their narratives, and people are wanting to go out and search for the truth, even and being called Holocaust deniers and all this stuff. Why? Because you lie so much. The CIA lies so much. Mossad lies so much. These people mind fuck people. They couldn't give you the truth if it gave them, if the truth came up and rebuild the third temple, Israel wouldn't give you the truth. They wouldn't allow it. They just fuck with the truth so much. Nobody believes them anymore. And when you see Project Mockingbird and how all this media is done, it's spilling into podcast land. It's all over the internet. It's everywhere. You literally you can't get out of the box, but you can be aware you're in a box, and you can make your box a little bit bigger. That's my philosophy. And it's all over there. These guys have no one to blame but themselves for all of this, because guess what? That's what happens when you never tell the truth. When you actually do, no one believes you. So one day they could tell the truth and say, look, we have it here, and people are still going to question it. And this is all on them. So I don't know, guys. Officially, Hitler didn't escape. We watched that documentary on it. It wasn't very compelling. I didn't like their evidence. But hey, someone could come up with some evidence that I find compelling. And if you do, show it to me. I'm not convinced with the George Soros one. I think it's possible he faked his death. But like I said, there's lots of people who said that he would go down with the ship. Maxfield, thank you for joining. Thank you so much for coming by. We're just about to wrap up the show. You guys can watch it on the replay. Like I said, we went over iPhone satanic, Virginia Jew-free, Princess Diana, and Adolf Hitler. That was a whole lot. We're going to have a whole lot tomorrow. We are going to cover the Canadian elections. If you think that's boring, that's okay, because we won't be doing the election results straight. I'm going to talk about Jordan Peterson and a couple Canadian stories and some politics that are going on. So we'll chat about different stuff. That's going to start at 7 p.m. Eastern, only because that's when the election stuff start. No show Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'll have a show on Thursday. So I'm losing my voice, guys, with all this information. I don't mean to be this person that wants to tie everything to Israel, but everything seems to be tying to Israel these days. I don't know. They might consider this anti-Semitism, but this isn't about Jewish people. This is about spy agencies and government officials, guys. This is what it's about. And they will stop at nothing. They'll stop at nothing to conceal their real devious, evil motives that they're actually doing. And this could have meant the death of Princess Diana. Virginia Giuffre is now gone. Suicide. We don't even know if Hitler was dead or what he did. We don't even know. Everyone's getting confused about what was true in war. Because they lie so much. And everything's so crazy. Nobody trusts the government, the deep state, the people that are running this stuff. Giving us the illusion of freedom with elections. It's absolutely insane, guys. And I'm going to end on that note. I thank you guys all so much. And remember, if you want to support me, you just go to genxonx.com. For you audio podcast listeners, that's genxonx.com. That is where you'll find the links. You can do a one-time payment. You can slop me some donations somewhere. I'll bring up the QR codes. We got PayPal on there. We got the Venmo on there. And of course, there's Cash App on there. And all the links are there to the live stream platforms. Right now, we're on X, YouTube, and we are on Rumble. So you can subscribe there. And there's also the audio podcast. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff all there. I've got Niche and Jer coming back in May. I'm trying to get a couple other guests hooked up. But I don't know. I'm behind on the guest thing. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, John Aside. Thank you, Maxfield. Thank you, VC. I'm sorry that I didn't, I'm glad you came and said the George Soros stuff. Like, I think it's good to put that out there, but I just can't get down with it. And if you've got more information that you want to pop up to me, that's fine. That's good. But Steve Wills came by. He watched this. Steve Wills, the UFO guy, he watched the show with Dean Bertram. That was great. I think I'm going to be on Dean Bertram's show on Tuesday night. I'll send the links when I can. All right. It is time for me to make my exit and leave you guys. And if you didn't see the whole thing, watch it on replay. This world is crazy, and I gotta go. Go out for a hike, take the dog for a walk, something, you guys. Thank you so much for showing up, and I appreciate you. We will see you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Oh, Canada. I'm scared. I don't want Mark Carney to win. Adios.